Oh, hello there. Colorado trees are not too hard to identify. There are not too many kinds, and they tend to grow in specific areas. There are only three key deciduous trees. The first is the plains cottonwood. It's a large and massive tree of the rivers and gulches, sometimes with a tangle of branches at the top. Member of the poplar family, the leaf is distinctive. The wood is not strong, and the trees rarely live past 100 years. It gets its name from the cotton-like seeds that the female trees produce in the spring and will drop all over, covering the ground like snow. The quaking aspen is also in the poplar family and has a similar leaf, but it is a slender tree that grows mainly at higher elevations. It has a thin whitish bark that does not resist insects very well. A stand of aspen trees is often just one individual. Each tree is a shoot from a common root system. The gamble oak is a shrubby oak tree that grows in dry locations throughout the Southwest. There are also various oaks called wavy leaf oaks that hybridize with one another and are quite hard to classify as they are all closely related. Well, those are the main deciduous trees in Colorado. The rest are evergreens, pines, spruces, firs, and Douglas firs. Now, all pines have needles wrapped at the base with a sheath. Spruces have needles that are attached with a small wooden peg and in a bottle brush-like arrangement around the stem. True firs have softer needles with fewer needles on the bottom of the branch and more on the top. Their needles are attached directly with a suction cup, and we'll talk about Douglas firs and junipers later. Now, of these trees, the ponderosa pine is large and somewhat ponderous, hence its name. It has the longest needles of any pine in the area, usually 4 to 7 inches in length and in clusters of 2 or 3, and rarely 1, 4, or 5. The mature cones are 2.5 to 6 inches long and quite broad. They open on the tree and have a prickle on each scale. The bark of older trees is thick and often broken into irregular plates. Ponderosa pine are very common on the eastern slope of the Rockies and at lower altitudes. The lodgepole pine is taller and more slender, especially when growing in a grove where the young trees compete for light. It's an excellent lodgepole in a teepee. Needles are in sheaths of 2, usually 1 to 3 inches long. Mature cones are 3/4 to 2 inches long and are usually closed and attached firmly to the stem. The bark of mature trees is gray with small scales that are a bit darker. The bark is thin and offers little resistance to fires. The bristlecone pine can grow at high elevations and live thousands of years. The needles are in bundles of 5, 1 to 1.5 inches long, and often have little white specks on them. The Colorado pinyon pine is a shorter pine common in the arid hills. It's rarely more than 20 or 30 feet high. The needles are in bundles of 2, sometimes 3, and are 3/4 to 2 inches long. The bark is pale to dark brown. The cones are short and rounded, 1 to 2 inches long, and they contain a large edible seed, the pine nut. And when you open it, you can see where the pine seed rested inside the cone. Actually, the pinyon pine depends very heavily on the local birds that catch the nuts. They bury them, actually, and they don't eat them all, and some of them sprout. The juniper, most commonly in our area, the Rocky Mountain juniper, also grows in arid areas and is commonly found with pinyon pines. The leaves are triangular little plates that overlap. Juniper berries are about 1/4 inch and bluish, quite bluish. Here, for example, is a pinyon pine and a Utah juniper growing next to each other out near Fruita and the Colorado National Monument. Now, we have at least 2 spruces in Colorado, the Engelmann and the blue, and they're quite similar. The blue spruce is the official state tree of Colorado. The new growth on the tree often has a distinctly bluish cast which wears off of the older needles. The needles stick out on all sides like a bottle brush, are 1 to 1.5 inches long, and squarish in cross section like all spruce needles. Blue spruce needles are very sharp and painful to grasp. Mature cones are 2 to 6 inches long, often about twice the length of the Engelmann spruce cones. The Engelmann spruce is one of the most widespread spruces in North America. It's similar to the blue spruce, which is much less common in nature but widely planted as an ornamental. The Engelmann spruce can have a bluish color and will hybridize with the blue. Its needles are sharp but aren't really as sharp as the blue spruce, and you can usually grab a branch without pain. The cone is smaller than the blue spruce cone. The subalpine fir is the most common Colorado fir. It's tall, slender, and grows at higher altitudes. The needles are single, flattish, soft, about 1 to 1.5 inches long, and stick out to the sides or up. They do not stick out in the bottle brush pattern of a spruce. The cones are 2 to 4 inches long and stick up rather than hanging down like the spruce cones. Colorado also has the less common white fir and cork bark fir. Now, the Engelmann spruce and subalpine fir are often found together at higher altitudes, such as on the high mountain passes, and they're actually fairly easily to distinguish from one another, especially when you get up close. The Douglas fir is also a key tree of the Colorado forest, but it's actually not a fir. That's why its name is hyphenated as Douglas fir rather than being 2 words. It was called a Douglas spruce in the past. It has soft and flat needles like a true fir, but the cones hang down like a spruce. The needles can be grasped without pain and are in the spruce-like bottle brush pattern. Douglas firs are often grown as Christmas trees. Their cone has a very distinctive 3-pronged bract that sticks out between the cone scales, and that's a sure identification as a Douglas fir. Technically, they are most closely related to the hemlocks or Tsatsuga family and are therefore named pseudo-Tsatsugas. So they're not firs, they're not spruces, but a form of hemlock. Well, those are the 12 most common Colorado native trees and the very basic introduction to their identification. The Colorado State Forest Service website has very nice maps of where you can find them in Colorado, as they tend to grow in different climatic zones. For more information, try a good book like the National Wildlife Federation's Field Guide to Trees of North America, or search the web for Stuart Weir's Native Trees of Colorado. You can print a copy of his guide for personal use. He covers many of the other less common trees also, such as the white firs and the narrow-leaf cottonwoods. And when you're out hiking in Colorado with the kids or the grandkid, you can identify most of the native trees knowing just these 12. And your kids can grow up being natives themselves who know the trees. Thank you.